going to be chapter 4. We're just going to do this while I quit coming up with something to aim the camera at. Ty walked back to his hut. He could feel a scream boiling up inside him. This was not the way life was supposed to work. He was the oldest man in camp, but his dad was the old man. He had just started to slack off a little bit and had started enjoying life as good as it was. Ty, the old man, was still teaching his sons and helping to teach his grandchildren. His dad, the old man, was there often doing the same, teaching grandchildren and great-grandkids. His father had been walking with his second oldest grandson when 3 men had attacked them just 100 yards from the camp. Seth, Ty's son, had yelled an alarm, and it had been heard by several young men. It was too late for the old man. The arrow had gone through his chest and lodged in his spine. He just crumpled to the ground. The arrow meant for Seth's heart had struck the knife he wore across his chest and glanced sideways into the skin outside his ribs. The impact had been hard. It knocked him off balance, but it was not enough to put him on the ground. The men had attacked from 20 yards and had started to close the gap as soon as they'd let the arrows loose. Seth threw his tomahawk with his right hand and his short knife with his left. One of the men had grabbed another arrow and stopped to knock it. And as soon as his glance went to the bow, Seth launched his tomahawk at the man's chest. The bow had come up just in time to deflect the axe into his shoulder instead of his rib cage. As Seth grabbed for his other knife, an atlatl dart flew past, barely missing the front attacker. The men stopped, turned, and disappeared into the tree line. Seth sank to the ground beside his grandfather. He was not yet dead. He tried to speak, but coughed blood. Then the old man sighed. I am glad to know you. I am proud to be your kin. Tell them all the same. He watched his grandfather drown in his own blood, unable to move. This was the story Ty, the new old man, had listened to as they waited for John to return with word on the attackers. War was war, and fighting and killing were part of this new world. But murder like this, it couldn't stand. These men were part of a group they'd never met. There had been no reason for this. The old man and Seth had caught a few rabbits and were carrying them back to the camp. They had their everyday with them, a couple of knives, their tomahawk or an axe, and a small kit to start a fire with. That was it. These men would soon learn that some laws still stood. Theft was the only possible motive for what had gone down. But murder and theft were not tolerated. This Ty grew up with. The first people he'd ever seen die had been caught stealing. There was no trial, no chance for repentance. The people had been part of a group from before everything fell apart. His grandfather had discovered a stash of food and watched it for days. And when the thieves had brought in another few items, he knew who they were. It had tore him apart inside, seeing people he had counted as friends stealing supplies meant for everybody. He'd kept his calm and hadn't confronted them, but rather decided to take the night to decide what would need to be done. The end. Chapter. This week. Should have longer notice.